My niece's wedding was a total train wreck. Drunk mom, fights, fake tans, and an officiant in sweatpants. And there wasn't even enough food. It was pure chaos without the dinner. Before watching the video, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I'd also really appreciate a like and a subscribe. The most interesting comment will be included in the next videos. Thank you to each and every one of you. Enjoy watching. I'm Rachel, 37 years old, female. And let me just say, I've seen some questionable family events in my life, but my niece's wedding last weekend, that was next level chaos. I'm still shaking my head, half in disbelief, half in pure second-hand embarrassment. My sister, the mother of the bride, has always had this white trash circus energy about her. Loud, dramatic, always pushing things just past the line. But this wedding, she really outdid herself. She showed up already drunk. Not tipsy, not oops, I had one too many. I'm talking leaning to one side, slurring every word, grabbing people's arms to keep her balance drunk. During the vows, she actually muttered, "Y'all better kiss already." Loud enough for everyone to hear. I wanted to crawl under my chair and disappear. Then this was the stepmother of the bride. She wore this tight smile that looked painted on with glue, but her eyes were pure venom. She kept muttering nasty little comments to anyone close enough to hear. My niece's dad, her husband, was the same as always. Spineless. Just hovering, wringing his hands, looking like a dog stuck between two owners, afraid to piss off either one. The bridal party. Don't get me started. Bride, groom, bridesmaids, groomsmen, all of them chain-smoking and pounding natural light beer like it was a competitive event, not even hiding it. During photos, during the ceremony and the photos, one of the groomsmen had a cigarette tucked behind his ear in the actual formal shots, and most of them were a shade of bright orange from the fake tans. They reeked like spray tan mixed with smoke and stale beer, and the scent clung to everything. And the officiant. The guy showed up in sweatpants and a t-shirt that looked like it came free from a gas station. No book, no binding, and nothing. Just winged the whole thing like he was hosting trivia night at a dive bar. The food situation was a disaster. Barely any to begin with. Not oops, we ran out early. No. There simply wasn't enough. I managed to grab a single sad chicken wing before the trays were empty. Guests were circling the buffet like vultures, realizing most of them weren't eating at all. Of course, the lack of food fueled the fights. The bride's mother screamed at the stepmother. The stepmother snapped at the father. Cousins started bickering over rides and who owed who money. It was a full-blown meltdown in every corner of that venue. And through it all, the poor wedding coordinator looked like she was in hell. She ran around with her clipboard, trying to slap duct tape on a sinking ship. Every time she fixed one disaster, two more exploded. By the end of the night, she looked like she'd aged 10 years. And me? I just sat there thinking, if there had been an actual dinner, this would have been the best dinner and a show experience of my life. Instead, it was just the show. And what a show it was. By the time the reception really kicked off, things were already unraveling. People weren't just tipsy. They were trashed. My sister, the mother of the bride, was practically sliding out of her chair, clinking her glass and yelling, "Woohoo!" at completely inappropriate moments. The stepmother stayed icy, standing in corners, whispering to anyone who'd listen about how this was why she hated that side of the family. The father just kept pacing between them, wringing his hands like always, muttering, "Let's all just enjoy the night," like that was even remotely possible. Then the music started, and God help me, the first dance was a less romantic waltz and more sloppy grinding. My niece and her new husband were swaying to some overplayed country song, each holding a beer in one hand and a cigarette in the other. The photographer looked like she was silently begging for death. At one point, my niece blew smoke directly into her groom's face mid-kiss, and everyone cheered like it was romantic. The bridal party wasn't any better. A couple of groomsmen decided to chug beers on the dance floor. One spilled half his can into a bridesmaid's neon orange dress, and she shoved him so hard he fell into the DJ's table. The music cut out with this horrible screech, and everyone groaned like it was the end of the world. That's when the arguments turned physical. My sister, the drunk mother of the bride, decided she wanted to dance, but she couldn't stay upright. She kept grabbing random people to hold her steady, almost dragging a chair onto the floor. At some point, she and the stepmother crossed paths. I didn't catch what was said, just a hissed insult, but suddenly my sister threw her a drink. Red wine, splashed right across the stepmother's pale beige dress. The gasp that went through the room was palpable. For a second, everything froze. Then the stepmother shrieked, shoved my sister backward, and my sister stumbled into the cake table. The cake, a sad, lopsided thing to begin with, collapsed onto the floor in one glorious splatter of frosting and crumbs. Gasps turned into chaos. My niece shrieked at her mother, the groom tried to break it up but was too drunk to be useful, and a couple of cousins actually started chanting, "Fight, fight, fight," like this was some high school brawl. The wedding coordinator looked like she wanted to quit on the spot. She actually tried to wedge herself between my sister and the stepmother, clipboard raised like a shield. That poor woman was basically risking her life for minimum wage. Meanwhile, my dad, spineless as ever, just stood by wringing his hands, muttering, "This isn't what we wanted." As if anyone cared at that point. I sat there, stomach in knots, thinking, this isn't a wedding. This is a demolition derby in slow motion. After the cake went down, things hit a point of no return. You'd think people would calm down, maybe try to salvage what was left. Nope, not this family. My sister, the mother of the bride, was covered in frosting, chunks of cake stuck to her dress and hair, and she was furious. She started screaming at the stepmother, calling her every name under the sun. The stepmother, red-faced with wine stains dripping down her beige dress, shrieked right back, accusing my sister of ruining her night. Her night at her stepdaughter's wedding. The bride, my niece, ran over, mascara streaked down her spray-tanned cheeks, yelling at both of them to shut the hell up. She looked like she was about to rip her fake eyelashes off and throw down herself. The groom, drunk as a skunk, just stood there swaying, holding 2 half-empty beers like he wasn't sure which one to drink first. And then, because of course, one of the groomsmen decided it was the perfect moment to jump in. He stumbled forward, pointing at the stepmother, and slurred, "You've always hated her. Admit it." He was so drunk he nearly tripped over the frosting on the floor. The stepmother tried to push him back, but he caught his balance on the buffet table, sending the last sad tray of chicken wings crashing to the ground. That was when the guests really lost it. People were shouting, pointing, some laughing like it was free entertainment. A couple of the bride's cousins started shoving each other over who'd warned about this first. Someone threw a chair, not at a person, just across the room like a tantrum. It clattered against the wall, and suddenly it was an all-out free-for-all. I watched a bridesmaid grab another bridesmaid's hair and yank so hard her tacky orange extension fell out. 2 uncles squared up like they were at a bar fight, chest bumping and spitting in each other's faces. And my poor dad, he just stood off to the side, wringing his hands and mumbling, "Can we just have a nice evening, please?" While the world burned around him. The wedding coordinator, God bless her, was still trying to keep order. She was shouting things like, "Please, this is a family celebration!" But her voice was drowned out by screaming, shattering glass, and someone starting a drunken chant of shots, shots, shots. I sat frozen at my table, clutching my sad little chicken wing bone, thinking, this isn't just a bad wedding. This is a public meltdown of an entire bloodline, and I'm related to them. The sound of shattering glass was what did it. Some drunk cousin tried to slam his empty beer bottle on the table like it was a bar trick and missed completely. It exploded into shards across the floor. That sharp crack turned the whole scene from ridiculous to dangerous in a second. People started shoving harder, swinging fists instead of words. One bridesmaid screamed as someone stepped on her bare foot and heels. My niece, the bride, was in the middle of it all, her fake tan streaking with tears, screaming at both sides of the family. "You're ruining my wedding!" she wailed, mascara dripping down her cheeks. The groom tried to pull her back, but he was so drunk he lost his balance and nearly dragged her down with him. My sister, the mother of the bride, wasn't letting go of her vendetta. She charged back at the stepmother, frosting still clinging to her hair like some deranged war paint. The stepmother shrieked and grabbed a centerpiece vase to swing like a weapon. That's when two groomsmen had to hold them apart. But of course, one of them slipped on spilled wine and they all went down in a heap. And where was my dad? Standing 10 feet away, hands shaking, muttering to no one in particular, "This isn't what we wanted. This isn't what we wanted." I wanted to scream at him, "Do something," but he never does. Not in my entire life. Guests were starting to leave at this point, hustling kids out the door, clutching their purses and jackets like they were escaping a riot. The poor wedding coordinator was on the phone, pacing near the entrance with her hand pressed to her forehead. I didn't need to hear her words to know. She was calling the cops. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, flashing lights lit up the parking lot. 2 officers walked in, and the place fell into this weird, slurred silence. Half the room suddenly pretended like nothing was happening. The other half kept shouting, "She started it!" while pointing fingers at whoever was closest. The cops separated my sister and the stepmother, who were still spitting venom at each other like teenagers in a schoolyard fight. The bride collapsed in a chair, sobbing into her hands, smearing makeup across her face. The groom tried to comfort her, but he was so plastered he ended up just patting her arm awkwardly like she was a stranger. Meanwhile, I just sat there in stunned disbelief. Watching your family unravel in front of strangers is one thing. Watching them unravel so badly the cops have to intervene, that's another level of humiliation. And yet, sitting in that wrecked reception hall, I felt this horrible clarity settle in. This wasn't just a one-night disaster. This was my family, distilled. All the dysfunction, all the chaos, all the ugliness, they just finally ripped the mask off in public. Update. So yeah, I posted about my niece's wedding disaster. And holy hell, I didn't expect the flood of responses. Some of y'all made me laugh so hard I nearly choked. Dinner and a demolition derby is officially the best description I've ever heard for that night. Some of you called me out for not stepping in when the cake collapsed or when my sister nearly went full WWE on the stepmother. Trust me, I thought about it. But if you've ever been around my families when they're drunk, you know the best survival tactic is to stay the hell out of the splash zone. What I didn't expect were the DMs from people who were actually at the wedding. Turns out half the guests found my post and decided to pile on. One woman messaged me like, "Thank you for saying it out loud. I've never seen a bride smoke through her vows before." Another said she got glass in her shoe and that beer bottle exploded and had to leave for urgent care. Unreal. The kicker? The wedding coordinator herself reached out. She found my post somehow and wrote, "You put into words exactly what I lived through. I'll be unpacking that night in therapy for years." I nearly cried reading that because I wasn't kidding when I said I felt sorry for her. She was the only one there actually trying to keep it from turning into a complete bloodbath. And yes, to everyone who asked, cops really did come. They didn't arrest anyone, but they did make my sister, the bride's mom, and the stepmother leave separately. Imagine being escorted out of your own daughter's wedding because you can't stop screaming insults at her stepmom. Absolute rock bottom. But here's the part that's been eating at me since that night. My niece, the bride. She was sitting there in her wrecked dress, fake tan running in streaks, sobbing like a child. And instead of comforting her, instead of stepping up, my sister stormed off, still cussing. The stepmother sulked in the parking lot, and my dad just wrung his hands and followed like a sad puppy. The poor girl was left alone. That image hasn't left my head. And maybe that's where the seed of revenge started growing for me. Not against my niece. God, no. Against my sister. Against the chaos she drags everywhere, the way she makes everything about herself, even her own kid's wedding. And so, yeah. Y'all who said, don't just sit there, get your payback. I think you're right. Because watching her destroy that night wasn't just humiliating. It lit a fire in me. And trust me, when I decided to act, I made sure it would hit her exactly where it hurts most. All right, picking up exactly where we left off. Same cast, same logic. Me, Rachel, 37, my sister, the mother of the bride, drunk, destructive. The stepmother, snitty, wine-stained beige dress. My dad, ringing, spineless. The bride, my niece, humiliated. The groom, blotto. The wedding coordinator, saintly and traumatized. This is the part where I stop just watching and start doing something that actually matters. And where my sister melts down like a live wire. I spent 2 days after that post in a weird blur. Half responding to DMs, half replaying my niece's face in my head. The bride deserved better than a courthouse-level circus. She deserved a night where people actually fed her, where someone held her hand and said, "You're okay." So I did the most obvious, pettiest, and sweetest thing I could think of. I gave her the reception she never got. I called the wedding coordinator first. She answered on the third ring like she was surprised anyone was still alive. She'd been sleeping with coffee cups on her nightstand and a stack of unpaid invoices. I told her I wanted an honest, sober, small redo. Just the bride, a few close friends, and whoever wanted to come who wasn't a walking headache. No speeches, no drunk relatives, no open bar where people weaponize as cheap beer. She choked up and said, "We can do it next Saturday. I'll bring the good linens." God bless her. Then I texted a handful of people I trusted from the wedding. A cousin who'd actually offered help between fights, the florist who'd cried in the van when the cake fell, the nurse who'd ended up with glass in her shoe. I told them, bring yourselves, bring a cookie, bring tissues. I lied about nothing. I said it was for the bride. I lied about nothing else. I paid for a real caterer, a clean little cake, and a photographer who promised not to post any trash. I set up a backyard reception at my place, fairy lights, crockery, plates that weren't paper. I made it cozy and embarrassing in a good way, the exact opposite of the wedding. Word spread quietly the way good things do. The bride cried when I showed up at her apartment with an extra dress. The original had been ruined. She said, "Rachel, you didn't have to." And I thought of the frosting in my sister's hair and the way everyone laughed and my throat closed. "Yes, I did," I said, and helped zip her into something that didn't smell like smoke. Of course my sister found out. This is the part I should have predicted, that the woman who performs drama like a full-time job would take any slight as a declaration of war. She knocked on my door 2 hours before guests arrived, hair limp with later night tears, breath reeking of whatever was in her purse. Her voice was two things at once, wounded and weaponized. "You think you can steal my daughter's day?" she wobbled. "You think you can play saint now?" I don't know why I expected a civil conversation. She shoved past me, stumbling into my kitchen like she owned the floorboards. She looked at the table I'd set. Real plates, flowers, a small white cake, and something snapped. She grabbed the cake knife like a flail and swung. I moved in front of the bride without thinking. Her hand clipped the edge of the cake. Frosting flew, and my sister screamed like someone had lit her on fire. Then she escalated, cracking into full meltdown, crying, shrieking, dragging in everyone she could find on her phone like backup. She slammed a salad bowl against the counter. It shattered. She grabbed my niece's arm, hard enough to bruise, and tried to march her out the door, weaponizing the bride's humiliation into a hostage situation. It was textbook. When cornered, she became violent. That's when the center of gravity in the room shifted. The bride's hand went limp for a second, and then she looked at me, and something in her eyes unpeeled. "Mom," she said low and steady. "Stop." The bride's voice broke my sister's spell. The stepmother arrived 5 minutes later because a cousin who'd seen the text, called her, and she didn't come to protect my sister. She came to drag her out, which only made my sister more unhinged. She screamed about betrayal, about being robbed of her spotlight, and started chanting my name like a curse. People tried to pull them apart. The photographer grabbed my sister's other hand. A bridesmaid shoved between them. An uncle tried to wedge his way in and wound up with frosting in his hair. My dad stood outside on the porch, hands in his pockets, muttering the same tired line, "Can we all calm down?" He didn't come in. He couldn't. He never could. In the chaos, a glass bowl hit the floor, and I swear something in me changed. I stepped forward and grabbed my sister's wrist, the one that had been loose with the knife, and I said plainly, "Stop. Now." Not in a whisper, not screaming, but just raw and unignorable. She turned on me like I'd kicked her dog. Her face was red and wet, mascara tracking into orange stripes on her cheeks. She screamed, and then she reached for me. We scuffled. It was ugly and not cinematic. Just arms and hair and someone yelling for someone to call the cops. Someone did. The sister tried to push the bride through my front door and out into the street. I held the bride back. The bride clung to my hand like an anchor. We smelled like cake and beer and something older, acrid and familial. When the cruiser pulled up, 2 neighbors had already burst into the yard with chairs, trying to block traffic. My sister tried to make a scene, to paint me as the villain, stealing her daughter, but the tape of the wedding replayed in my head. Her yelling during vows, the cake, the glass. The coordinator stepped forward, shaky and precise, and testified, not in court, not legally, but to the officers, about what she'd seen. She handed the cop a typed list of vendor invoices and the coordinator's notes. The cop looked tired and then pragmatic. They separated us again and left me with the mess, the bride, and 30 people who actually wanted to help. I didn't win anything dramatic that night. My sister's car sat in my driveway later with a slashed tire. She'd taken one swing at property instead of people. She'd texted the bride all night, alternately pleading and threatening. She posted a video the next morning of herself crying with a caption about family betrayal. She made a show of being the wounded martyr. But the bride sat across from me the next morning, hair in a messy bun, cup of real coffee in her hands. She hugged me and said, "Thank you for trying." That was payoff enough. The rest, the slash tire, the social media op-eds, my sister's evening interviews with the relatives she dragged into the drama, felt cheap next to the look on the bride's face when she took her first proper bite of decent food and didn't have to watch someone else ruin it for attention. By the time Part 7 rolled around, the chaos outside the reception was no longer an accident. It had turned into a campaign. Whatever shame my sister felt for being laughed at had curdled into something mean and purposeful. Slash tire in my driveway the night after I hosted the redo? Fine, petty, stupid, and obvious. But then it got worse. She started showing up where she knew the bride would be. The first time the florist called me, voice shaking. There's a woman out front asking if she can speak to the owner about it being cheated on, yelling about Rachel stealing her daughter's party. It was my sister. She stood on the curb filming with her phone, sobbing and alternating between begging the florist to cancel the bride's orders and screaming that I had stolen what was rightfully hers. The florist, bless her, locked the door and called me because she recognized the whole performance from the wedding night. A day later, the bride texted me a photo of her car with keys bent in the lock and deep scratches along the passenger door. Then someone painted a crude message on my garage in permanent marker, "Rachel Thief." Whoever did it used someone else's mask. The neighbor's Ring camera picked up a dark hoodie and a familiar wobble in the walk. It was my sister's gait, the same stumble I'd seen when she tried to push through my kitchen door. The footage was grainy, but enough to nail down a timeline. She began calling my niece's workplace, a small boutique where the bride arranged floral displays at part-time, pretending to be a concerned patron, and then a furious mother who demanded her daughter be protected. The store manager called me, near tears, admitting she'd put the bride on unpaid leave while they investigated complaints. That stab hurt the bride in a way broken cake never had. It jeopardized her paycheck, which she'd used toward the honeymoon and to pay off the caterer. My sister wasn't just making noise. She was trying to erase my niece's life. Internally, rage and cold clarity braided together. I could either get pulled into a public slugfest, matching escalation for escalation, or I could weaponize the one thing my sister couldn't handle: facts. So I did 3 things, methodically. First, I collected. I saved every DM, every voicemail, every ring clip, the florist's email with the timestamp message, the boutique manager's text about the leave, everything. The wedding coordinator's notes, which she'd typed up in the calm after the storm, became gold. Times, vendor failures, and the fact that my sister had been intoxicated during the ceremony and had physically endangered people. The coordinator agreed to sign a sworn statement if needed. Second, I filed. Slash tire, police report, vandalized garage, police report, harassment and threats, police report. The officers were practical and tired and told me they couldn't arrest on emotion alone, but they took evidence, set the case number, and warned my sister about continuing contact. That paper trail mattered more than a Facebook rant. Third, I used the ugly public stage she craved, but carefully. Instead of blasting her on social media, I sent a single calm email to 3 places that would actually make a difference. The boutique manager, with the ring clip and the timeline. The bride's college advisor. The bride was finishing a certification program. I sent context so no one misread those complaints. And the family group chat where my sister had been spinning stories. The tone was clinical. Here's what happened. Here's the evidence. Here's the police report number. No drama, no name-calling, just receipts. Sweet revenge is small and procedural sometimes. The boutique manager rescinded the leave the same day after seeing the video and the call record. The bride went back to work. The family group chat turned. People who drunk the Kool-Aid suddenly remembered they'd been there in person, not in the highlight reel my sister posted. Cousins who'd been silent started sending private messages asking if the bride was okay. The wedding coordinator forwarded her signed notes to the officer and to the small claims court clerk when I filed for property damage. The cake replacement, the slashed tire, the bowl and glassware my sister smashed in my kitchen. I wasn't out for blood. I wanted the record to show what happened and to strip away my sister's performance of victimhood. Legally, it wasn't spectacular. Small claims hearings don't make headlines. But when my sister had to sit across from me at the municipal building, mascara streaked from a night of theatrical crying, lips working to craft another martyr's story, and the judge asked for evidence, the judge got receipts, vendor invoices, ring footage timestamps, the coordinator's typed notes, the boutique manager on speaker confirming the call to HR. Watching her scramble for a narrative that fit reality was quieter and more delicious than any scream. She pressed the same wound she'd always used, shame, attention, and it didn't open. The judge ordered her to pay for the tire and a portion of the cake, and issued a temporary no-contact order while the harassment case moved forward. The neighbor who'd filmed the ring clip sent me a text. "You did the right thing. She can't yell you out of receipts." It didn't erase the scabs. My garage still had a faint marker outline the next week, and my sister posted a string of sad videos claiming persecution. But the tide had turned. The bride had her job back. The florist texted me a photo of a bouquet captioned, "For the real bride." And the coordinator said she felt less alone knowing someone would actually show up at court if she needed to testify. The worst of it? My dad called to ask if I'd gone too far. For once I didn't fold. I told him the truth. I protected my niece from a wreckage that wasn't her fault. He stayed quiet. That silence felt like another kind of victory. It's been a few weeks since the hearing, and the dust is finally starting to settle, or at least as much as it can with my family. My sister didn't go to jail. This wasn't some Hollywood courtroom scene, but she did have to pay restitution for the tire, the shattered dishes, and part of the catering costs. Watching her hand over that check, lips pursed like she was swallowing glass, was honestly more satisfying than if she'd been cuffed. Money's always been her soft spot. She'll set fire to her dignity in public without blinking, but losing $1? That cuts deep. She's kept mostly quiet since the no-contact order. She still posts cryptic Facebook rants, blurry selfies with captions like, "One day they'll see who the real villain is," but now they get maybe 2 pity comments instead of the flood of attention she craves. People are tired. The family group chat is quiet too. For once I don't feel like I'm screaming into a void when I say, enough. The bride, my niece, is doing better. She came over last weekend with her husband, who, let's be real, is still a walking beer can, but at least was sober enough to drive. She sat at my kitchen table eating leftover lasagna, smiling for the first time since the wedding. She told me, "That night at your house was the first time I felt like someone was on my side." That sentence alone made all of it worth it. The wedding coordinator even sent me a thank you card, handwritten, floral print, saying she'd almost quit the business after that disaster, but decided to stick with it because she'd seen there were still decent clients out there. I cried when I opened it. To think the most overworked woman in that whole mess actually walked away with a sliver of hope. That's the revenge I didn't plan but love the most. And my dad, still spineless. He called last night, voice quiet, saying he wished things hadn't gone so far. I told him flat out they only went as far as she pushed them. For once, I didn't soften it. There was a long silence. Maybe something landed. Maybe not. Here's what I know. I didn't let my sister rewrite the story. I didn't let her destroy her daughter's wedding twice. And I didn't let her weaponize the chaos she thrives on against me. I fought back, not with screaming, but with evidence, calm, and a little creativity. Sweet revenge isn't always fire and brimstone. Sometimes it's a quiet, methodical stripping away of someone's stage until they're standing alone, shouting into the dark, and nobody's clapping anymore. And that's where she is now. Frosting still in her hair, metaphorically, mascara streaks that nobody cares about, rehearsing her martyr act to an empty room. Meanwhile, I'm sitting at my table sipping coffee, my niece safe, my house intact. For once I don't feel embarrassed to share my last name, and that, after everything, feels like winning. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and like it. You can also watch more shocking stories in the playlist.